Welcome back to F3, Filmmaker Feature Fridays, where we celebrate our Jamaican, Caribbean, regional filmmakers who are making waves and splashes here at home or abroad. The ones who are championing local stories, taking our authentic Jamaican stories or authentic Caribbean stories and sharing it with the world, because we know that our stories matter and our little local is in fact global. Our personal stories have universal resonance, and so if we don't celebrate them, if we don't champion those stories, who else will? And here to do exactly that with me on this episode is a name that is known across this industry. She has been doing amazing work. I've always wanted to sit down with her in this capacity. The one and only remarkable writer, director, cinematographer, Gabrielle Blackwood. Gabrielle Blackwood. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh gosh, it means so much that you are here.
I appreciate the invite.
Oh, wow. So if y'all don't know Gabrielle Blackwood, she prefers to be called Gabby.
Or
Just
Gabs.
learned, or Gabs, just learned that. But Gabby is an award-winning writer, director, cinematographer. She's been working in spaces in the UK, in the US, here regionally for names like, and commercial work for names like Adidas, Mercedes, Apple, Nike, Clocks.
You see how you hello? You're like real Jamaican on that one.
Oh my goodness. And you have screened films, narrative films, short films in the UK. No?
Well, I mean, they've screened all of, but yes, yes, you're right. I did screen Gravedigger in the UK, yes.
Because I'm looking at this
is
right
true.
here and...
I wasn't there physically. But yes, it did screen there.
Okay, so you've screened internationally, won film festivals or been awarded at film festivals regionally and internationally. Wow. You are doing amazing work in Gabby. I hope you know that.
I think I just started. I haven't achieved what I've wanted to achieve just yet.
Yeah,
so
but you're
I
only in your
just started.
30s. You have enough years to go. But I'm telling you this, if you don't want to hold on to it, you are doing amazingly at where you're at.
Thank you.
And I know you're growing, and it's higher heights.
Always.
Higher heights, because we're not do the stuck thing.
Always moving.
I'm excited to hear that you are in post-production on a feature documentary, Norman. Hopefully we talk a little bit more about that. And also a docu-series. What I want to name?
About the bobsled team.
Jamaican Goal about the bobsled team. Looking forward to whatever those are gonna be. And then this one I'm more familiar with. You're in pre-production for your narrative feature film, Kendall, which is an amazing story about the Kendall train crash. But yeah, she's probably going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But Gabby, you're going with things. You're going with things.
It's been a busy period for personal projects. Obviously, you need to keep the bread and butter going. So that's where the commercial work and even some of the documentary work comes in, because now people are doing documentaries which are more like promo video style, documentary style, commercial type projects. So, I mean, those have been coming in as well. But, you know, I've spent a couple of years just working a lot. And I still need to. But, you know, it was at the disadvantage of some of my personal projects and working on those and, you know, getting those ahead. So what people don't realize is I write a lot. Like I consider myself a prolific writer in the sense that when I'm not working or whenever I have a break, I'm always writing some project or the other. I'm always, you know, I have like folders on my phone, on my computer with ideas, inspirations, notes. For example, I'll be in like, you know, a store or a restaurant or even in the theaters or, you know, walking on the road or, you know, just somewhere, and I'll hear somebody say something and it's novel, and then I'll just make a note of it. So I have a lot of quotes, and I'm sure you do the same. So, you know, writing actually excites me a lot more than people think, and how I got into this field, or how I knew I was interested in this field, was because when I was younger, I used to write a whole lot. So I'd write a lot of short stories, like between the ages of 6 and 8. And then every time, my parents had a wedding anniversary, I would, get all my friends over, and it didn't matter where I was. So whether it was next door neighbors, or I was by my grandmother's house in Mandeville, and,
From Mandeville?
You're from Mandeville?
I'm from Mandeville, yes.
Look at this small world. But I mean, well, you're familiar with this space now, but the fact that I wasn't from Mandeville, but I'd go there every year, and then I'd make friends with her next door neighbor's children who would fly in from the States, and I'd bring them over and start saying, okay, well, let's do this, and let's act out this, and then I always tell people this, that my mom had some old curtains, and I'd cut them up and, make costumes and stuff, but they were her old curtains. But a lot of that influence also came from the fact that I used to go to a lot of Barbara Gluedon plays. At the time, it was Little People as well, happening in the theaters. So I would also reenact those and try and get, my friends to do that. And I think if I had in my other life, in my next life, I would be the conductor of an orchestra. So I'm obsessed with music and different types and styles of music, which also infers the work that I do. So I found that in music class, like in, prep school, like I'd be reenacting even, I'd be doing a lot of musicals. So, there is also that. So writing has been a huge part of my life. And, it started from then. And I was an avid reader, so.
Okay.
I was a huge bookworm.
That's fun. I used to write a lot of things when I was
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah. I used to even write songs. That's what.
Really?
Yeah, I used to write songs.
I can't say, I never wrote songs, but I get excited by writing, and I know you probably do.
I do. And just the same way you're saying, you can be anywhere and you'll see a thing or you'll hear a thing. I have this running file on my phone called possible dialogue. So I'll just hear somebody say something. I'm like, oh, that would be interesting to put somewhere. And I'll write that down. Or I'll see a person. I'm like, what's an interesting character?
And then you write down like characteristics.
Description,
yes. Same.
And some parts of them and some parts of those conversations always end up in the stuff that I write. That's amazing.
And that just makes it feel more natural, especially if it's something related to, wherever you got the quote
the inspiration
from.
Nice.
But yeah.
Nice. So we hear about your background as in where that love for I'm going to say storytelling came from. I'm interested to know the transition from loving to write, to read, to write, to becoming a director, and I want us to land on being like a DP. Like, how did that happen?
So, where to begin? So high school. Okay, so what I attributed me directing my friends in all these plays and mini productions, doing it. When I say that, we even had intermissions. So like me and my sisters, we'd like, okay, you may not think it's a big deal, but to us it was at the time. But like, the Frankfurters, we would always take it and put it on the fork, and like on the stove, we would always, that was our like roast, and we had that. And at the time, Olay chips was a big deal. And so we would save up like, because we didn't really get pocket money, but we got lunch money. So we'd save up the leftovers of lunch money, and then, buy some of those snacks. And so it would be like that kind of like movie affair, but I was never thinking movie at the time. And I kept thinking, the directing is teaching. So I thought, I want to be a teacher. God forbid. Now I look back and I'm just like, what was I thinking?
We're figuring it out.
And you and I both know, because we both have experience in that. Right, but you may love it.
No, right now, I love the level I teach at. I really love it. Yeah.
I'm not so I love the teaching. I'm not a fan of the marking. Especially when you have over 100 and on students, and you have to. That's the part.
That's challenging.
So I do like the teaching part, but I was not meant to be a teacher in the sense that I thought I was then. And then I thought, maybe architecture, because at the time, so I went to Campion. At Campion, you had to choose between French and architecture when you're going into third form. Like that was a toss-up outside of all the other subjects. And so I chose TD. So I said, okay, well, with TD, maybe you can lead you to architecture. Thought, okay, architecture. Also thought journalism because of writing. And then I was fast forward to fifth form, and I went to the principal's office, and they had, people were deciding whether they should just sat and, or stay locally, and, whether they should leave in fifth form or leave at the end of sixth form. And I saw it was actually a SAT or a college booklet. And at the back, it had a list of maybe like 100 occupations. And I went down the list because I was still not feeling satisfied with my options. And then I saw cinematography. Had no idea what it meant, but I saw the cinema part of it, and then I thought film. And I also realized at that time what I had been doing unconsciously was I was always watching programs that, like, whether it's series or episodics or films, and I was always critiquing them. And I didn't realize, I was just doing it for fun, never thought anything of it. There was one in particular that stood out to me. Boy, everything kind of ties in, works together. I'm now realizing. And it was called The Other Side of Paradise. And it was one of my favorite series ever. Where was The Other Side of Paradise made? In New Zealand. So you know where I'm going. But at that time, when I'm like age, I don't know if I was, 14, 13? Maybe 13 or 12. I was not thinking that at all. Later on, years later, maybe 10 years later, I actually bought the book because I didn't get to finish the episodic, and I was always wondering what happened. Anyways, so that was The Other Side of Paradise. And so I said, okay, well, film. And then I said, okay, what are the options here? And at the time, we didn't have a film school or a film program. We had Carmack. So, and I didn't want to go to school abroad, or I thought of it, but I really am also a homebody, or I was at that time.
Because now you all over the place.
now I'm not so much of a
international.
Homebody. Right. But I mean, or I love traveling, let's say that much. I still am a homebody, but wherever I feel at home at is home for me in that sense. So I got through to Carmack and did that, but the whole time I was at Carmack, I was always looking, the plan was always to do a postgraduate degree in film, and a practical one at that. And so I had applied and got through to schools in the UK, but New Zealand was where I wanted to go because at that time, they had come out with The Last Samurai, which was my favorite film at the time. And they filmed it to replicate Japan, but they filmed a lot of it in New Zealand. So then I've wanted to do a Jamaican Western using our landscape. And I know New Zealand's landscape is similar to ours. So I was saying, well, how can I make Jamaica a virtual location for other, other places? Like it's, the virtual geography of it. So that's what I said I would study and do overseas in New Zealand. And fortunately, I was able to get a Commonwealth scholarship to go there. And film, I was the youngest at the time, and also the first person in film to get that Commonwealth scholarship to go there, because it also was not a very cheap program. And
I can imagine.
The university I was at there, they had two film programs. So they had a film and television program, which is their main and general program for film, and then they have a screen production program, which is a little bit more specialized, or a lot more specialized. And in my group for the master's program, I think it was 9 of us.
Oof.
From around the world. So, it was, for them to allow the scholarship to begin with, I was very blessed. And so that's the only reason and only way I got to go over there and study. And then I specialized in directing drama. We learned screenwriting. I love screenwriting. We learned producing. We learned directing. Those are the 3 specializations. The screen production program in New Zealand, it only had the master's program. It only had 9 of us, as opposed to the film and television, which had a lot of the other filmmakers. And I mean, it was 9 of us from around the world. So, that was also pretty cool and novel to have, people from different backgrounds with different perspectives, and then all of us kind of working together at the same time, as well as individually on our own projects. So I specialized in directing drama there. I'd always wanted, leading up to it and, going through university, by this time, I knew that me doing those plays was me wanting to direct.
Ah, wow.
So directing was my passion at the time. I'd always wanted to go into cinematography because, remember, that was that word I didn't know the meaning of years before, but that was the word that was a trigger to me making the decisions I made afterwards professionally. So I did direct and completed that, came back home. Now at the time, we didn't really have a film industry, so to speak. And when I say that, we did have producers and we did have older members we had films that were made, but we didn't have a burgeoning industry that it was, a continuous rollout of films, or even when I say that, work that was actively being creative, and it was a lot of commercial work. So the commercial market was good and probably even getting better, but there is also a disparity between the younger generation and the older generation. Now I feel that has seamlessly merged, or let me not say seamlessly, but it has gotten a whole lot better now.
Yes.
We have a different industry now that we had in the past, or when I came into it. But it was difficult, and I'll say that because at the time, because the bread and butter at the time, making money at the time was really from commercial work, and I'm talking 2011, because I left 2009, came back early 2011. So my first project was actually a documentary project, and that was strange in the sense that I wasn't in the field mainstream. I'm not even sure how I got that project. I think it was actually another student who was with me at Carmack who then recommended me to somebody for it. So it's just, how life works out. But yes, so I got that project and I directed it, and then after that it was just radio silence. And that's another lesson in life. Like, things don't just happen because you want them to happen. You have to work for it. And so what ended up happening was I started working with a team of people, and we started doing commercial work, but it wasn't commercial work that was also happening regularly either. And in that sense, I was either producing or I was directing, but I really just wanted to direct. What I found was that a lot of the work that agencies would provide, they would hire DPs outside. But they would use a lot of their internal people to actually direct, or they would use a creative director to direct. So that lesson there was that in Jamaica at that time, we didn't value directors a lot at all. So it's very difficult to get directing work. Easier to get for commercial directing work, but also because a lot of people are using in-house directors or their people to direct. They would rather hire somebody who could operate a camera and light. So I had already had a passion for that because, backstory, my dad was into photography in his heyday. That was his thing, that was his hobby. He also used to act in theater. So I think I got the photography side of things from him, or the interest in it, I should say. And then I started to explore it a bit more because I saw, that's where, that's how people are being hired. And I needed to make it my profession in the sense that, when you've worked towards something for so long, I've gone to university for it, I've gone to school for it, I've spent money on it, my parents have spent money on it. I need to make it something worthwhile outside of having the passion for it. Then I said, okay, I'm going to have to teach myself to become a DP.
Oof.
And so for about 2 years, and that's another thing, you can't just come up and say, oh, you're a DP. Like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Once you're on set and you know what you're about, that's different. But for about 2 years, literally, I got a camera. That was the first thing. Or not the first thing, that was the second thing. The first thing I was doing was I was on forums. So online forums with other DPs, other cinematographers. Each, each camera company tends to have their own platform where they discuss the nuances of their cameras, etc. So I was on that. Then I got my first camera, which is like a Canon T3i. Like one of those small DSLR cameras back then. And I literally just started shooting anything. It could have been flowers. I can't tell you how often I shot my family. They probably got very annoyed with me. I shot my shoes, it's just different things. And when I say different things, I'd be at home, like, trying out different lighting setups. Also how to work with less lights, how to work with more lights, how to flag lights, how to shape lighting, not just how to set up lights. Shaping light, diffusing light, how to work with artificial lighting versus how to work with natural lighting. You know, I'd be cutting out, so I would buy like foam cores or foam boards. And then going to like pings and buying like, you know, shiny silvery fabric and then wrapping that and like staple gunning it. So it was literally all, you know, grassroots stuff. And then my dad, because he had passed through that phase of, you know, doing photography himself, and he was doing it seriously at the time when he was younger. He still has a passion for it, but he doesn't do it. So obviously he'd be like my guinea pig for a lot of the stuff, but he was willing and able, right. But the fact that he was also supportive of, you know, my dream, which seemed so far gone, it just pushed me even more, because you just want to make it a reality, not just for yourself, but for everybody else that has been cheering you on and investing. Right, exactly. And so it was when I did, so there's a project called Dennis. It's a featured documentary, and that was really supposed to be a passion project, in the sense that a friend of my mom's, a coworker of my mom's, her husband was diagnosed with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. And so, you know, he basically had, I would call it locked-in syndrome, but it's basically when all your nerves literally just go. Eventually, over time, they tend to give you about 5 years, depending on how far along you are. So he was at home, he was in a chair, he could not talk, he had to be spoon-fed. And I was really just going to do like a short little 2-minute video just to say, can you guys please donate, and, you know, put, you know, some bank account info, because it's also very difficult on the caretaker in these instances. And I mean, it is, yes, one for him, but also for his wife, and they have a daughter. And, you know, she was, I think at the time, just getting into high school, just started high school. So, you know, she has her whole life ahead. And so, yeah, we were just looking to try and get assistance or make a video for that. And then when I visited the house about 2 days in a row, and it's one thing to know about something, but then to see it in reality, and then imagine having to live like as his wife, as his caretaker every single day. And then also having to imagine him, and he can't express himself in the way I'm sure he would love to. He may not have been a big talker before, but I wanted to be able to communicate the way he probably felt internally. And so I would ask his wife, you know, what were some of the things that he liked? And then, you know, there's this whole idea of, okay, well, he liked cricket. So then I started to think, okay, well, what kind of feelings and emotions do you get while you play cricket? And if it's in front of a crowd, and, you know, whatever it is. So then this whole narrative started building up. And I just reached out to Sabina Park, who, bless their hearts, they were willing to just loan me the stadium for like half a day just to film a scene for it. Then, you know, JUTC was also willing to, so she was talking about a trip that they took, like one of her favorite trips with him. And, you know, in my head, I felt like, you know, there's this weight that he has to be dealing with. And then the visual of, you know, them pushing, you know, him pushing a bus, or people pushing a bus, came up. And then I was like, okay, well, I need a bus. And then JUTC came in clutch with that. And, you know, just going through that whole process of trying to imagine, yes, how he felt, it developed into this much bigger project. And then it now became a feature-length project. So then when that screened, then that's when people started. That was about 2015. People started like, oh, wait, you know,
she has an eye. She has a DPI.
Well, I mean, for me, that was more of the directing side.
Okay.
But then, as we backtrack to knowing what made the bread and butter. I personally started marketing myself now on social media, which then became a thing at that time, because I mean it was there, but I think around that period IG started blowing up, and Facebook kept getting less and less and less in terms of popularity. So really out of necessity, I started marketing myself more as that than anything else. But when I say marketing myself as that, also backing it up with this skill set, because that's very, very important. You know,
You don't just put
you
a tag
can't
on
just
a thing.
you can't, right? And it's one of the things I tell people. I always feel weird when, you know, you see a lot of people with photographs of them and a camera and this and it turns out, unless I'm actually really doing something with the camera, I'd rather that picture than the picture of me just posing off with a camera, because anybody can do that. So yeah.
What I'm hearing is this wonderful journey of self-discovery. First, not necessarily having the technical language for the things you were doing, to finding the technical language, to having to recognizing what was happening in your industry, making a shift, making a pivot, and then blossoming into
What's
the
happening now?
Gabrielle Blackwood, director, DP extraordinaire.
Every time somebody says something similar to that,
Gabby, you're good.
I internally
like you're
cringe.
excellent.
No, but I internally cringe only because I haven't. If you ask me what my best work is, I haven't yet done that.
And you shouldn't, because you're still in the 30s, woman.
Yeah, but you know, and you have a timeline, and
No,
you feel like the
I gonna tell you
timeline
for dash for the timeline and just make life happen.
Well, this
but
is
I really
true.
appreciate how intentional you were, and the varying decisions that you make.
Yeah.
And that's an important note for me, and it's something that I've been learning recently about just being very, very intentional.
Have to be.
You know, you can have the hopes, you can have the dreams, but what are the decisions that you're making, exact decisions that you're making towards that? So I'm inspired by that alone.
No, it's very, and you know, you bring up a very good point, because when people say, you know, like they'll ask, okay, well, how would you advise me to go about things? You know, they're interested in film, what can they do? And my very first thing would be, it's easy to say get involved, but what does that mean? And my thing would be, if you have access to a camera or can get access to a camera, so you may not own one, you may not have the resources to get one, but you see, because our film industry has grown so much, there are even production houses who are willing, once either they can monitor the use of it, or they know what it's being used for, they know you, they are willing to help. I remember for my thesis film, when I came back to Jamaica to film it, like getting lighting gear and all of that stuff, props to Phase 3, Delano, and yes, Carmack also helped out. But, you know, I got that free of cost for, I think, the 3 or 4 days that we shot my thesis film. And, you know, for example, Delano didn't know me from Adam in that sense, but, you know, he knew the intent and he knew the purpose behind it, and they weren't benefiting from it. So, you know, and that was from 2010. So we started from 2010. Things have changed and blossomed so much more. So I can only imagine the resources that are
available.
Right.
So anything you can catch, if that is what you want to do, use what you have, try to get access to the things and just do it. Don't just talk about it, don't just dream about it, be intentional about it. You were, as you were sharing the story, we got a little bit of insight. I got a little more insight about exactly what you do as a DP. Because some people believe that as a DP, you kind of just hold up a camera and shoot, right? But there's so much nuance to it. So we hearing stuff like shape lights. What else? What are the specific things in a succinct way that you do as a DP? What does a DP do really?
So, okay, some people, so DP meaning director of photography, and you know, for hiring stuff specifically for films, people tend to refer to them as cinematographers. But as you look at photography, if you look at the two words, and this is something I also learned from, because I used to lecture part-time, and a colleague of mine, he brought this up, and he's a photographer, and I've always leaned on it every time. The word photography is photos and graphy, I think, in Latin or Greek, and it literally means painting with light or drawing with light. So I always think of DPing as that. And yes, it is understanding how to shape, draw, or paint with light based on the project that you're working on, based on the vision that's presented for the project that you're working on, and trying to marry the director's vision to your input and your vision in that project or understanding of that project. And that, relates to what's the mood and tone that you want and the feel that you want to get in relation to the setting and the characters. Is there a tension that you need to feel, and how are you going to film that? How are you going to compose the image? How are you going to frame it? Is there going to be movement? Is it going to be static? What's that going to look like? Even more so, a lot of people don't realize that DPs, so they think, I don't say they think, sometimes people assume
yeah,
that DPs just show up on set and then
something
everything
magical happens.
Something either magical happens or things are worked out there, then and there, and that's not or ever the case. At least not when I work in the capacity of a DP with a director. A lot of the times, we are working weeks
way ahead of
way
production.
ahead. We're looking at reference images. We are scouting. We are, I don't want to say we are doing the shot listing, because a lot of times people think that the DP is the person that is supposed to shot list. Really, it's the director that starts it. And then the DP, gives their input on that. But we are shot listing with the directors in the sense that, let's say after the director comes up, whether they shot list or whether they do a storyboard. We come together and then we map out everything. What I like to do is, especially if it's a narrative project, we work through every single shot before we start shooting. So on that day, there's a shorthand, and even better and I don't mind working with first-time directors. Some people have an issue like, oh, but you don't know if the person can direct, the person can't. The fact is there's a first time for everybody. But we will work out those shots before. So on the day, we know what shot we're referencing, and there's like a shorthand. So, there is that. And in everything, you have to work with a crew. A lot of people don't realize this, but the DP is the only person on set who is in charge or is the HOD of two departments: the camera department and the lighting department. Nobody else is in charge of two departments. So I always said to people, I always make this joke: you will always know when the DP goes to the bathroom, because the DP literally cannot come off set. If they're not talking with the director, they're talking with their camera crew. If they're not talking with their camera crews, and when I'm saying that, meaning like the ACs/DIT, etc., they're definitely speaking with their gaffer or with their grips. So, it is a full-on thing. And then not to mention, and I mean, some DPs don't operate, and then there are DPs that do both. So I do both, and lots of other DPs do that as well. So, there's also that added, tangent to it all. But we also work a lot with production design. Huge. Oof. We also should be working a lot with wardrobe and makeup. Huge.
Like have tentacles, you're working with everybody.
You should be working with, exactly. But I know specifically for production design, and we have to discuss whether it's colors, whether it's, for example, we look at whether it's curtains, drapes, whatever it is, what color share, how thick do you want the fabric to be? Because you're also looking at the light coming in. What type of lighting are you going to use outside? Are you also going to be using natural lighting? What time of day will you be shooting? You are looking at colors. I specifically, because I'm a colorist, I look at what camera am I going to be using? There's a project that we had worked on recently, Hanif's project, and it was all about skin tone. Right, shade of indigo. And it was all about skin tone. And because that was super important, we were doing tests before. And when I say camera tests, before the actual shoot day, because I wanted to make sure that the camera that we're using could shoot the way that we needed to shoot, with not a lot of, so we had lights, yes, but based on the space and the scouting, etc., we knew we wouldn't have a lot of lighting access at certain points. So we needed a low light camera. I was concerned about, because there are certain cameras that are low light, good in low light, but not good with skin tones, and black skin tones in particular. So we had to be doing tests for that as well. So those are some of the things I take into consideration. And in that, the color science of the camera. And then the lights that you use. So color rendering index is a thing with lights. And now I'm getting into maybe too much detail.
So being a DP is not just taking up a camera and pointing and shooting, guys, just in case you were so disillusioned. All right.
But, different lights have, yes, there is intensity of light. And a lot of times, DPs even focus on, this is a stronger light and this is a less powerful light. This will be easier to diffuse. This will be stronger in terms of shining. But I look at also, how color registers in the light in terms of the accuracy of that color. How is it true blue? Is it true tungsten? Tungsten meaning orange, because that affects color and all of that. And yes, you can fix things in post, but there are just some things that you can't fix in post, or preferably not. So, those are all the things that, you have to take into consideration. So, no, I digress and I've forgotten. Where were you even started?
Yeah, you're still on the topic of, or the point of what exactly your role as a DP entails. So, yeah, it's a whole lot of work, guys. And a lot of commitment hours before, during, and even after the process. Wonderful. So, now, guys, that was a lot, and that was really, really great, Gabby. Really, really great stuff. We are moving into the second segment of our show. That is Act 2 for a little fun and some games. Gabby, what you've shared already is so rich. Kind of complicated this next section, but I'm going to simplify it for you because you've answered so many of the questions that would have come up in this section. So, usually, you get 4 questions. You, because you are special, get 1. You're going to get 1 question. So the game is, I give you an option of 4 shot types or 4 shot sizes, and you choose one, and whatever question is associated with that, you get the question. I ask you the question.
Oh, yeah, I like this. This is fun. Yeah,
and it would have been funner if we got to do all of them, but but you did. You answered. There's so many questions that you answered, Gabby. I love it. All right, so the options are close-up, medium close-up, or medium, wide, or Dutch.
Dutch.
Oof, of course you went Dutch. Of course you went Dutch. This is interesting. So, your Dutch angle question. Gabby, being that you've spent so many commitment hours developing your craft as a cinematographer and learning all the science of everything.
I'm so nervous.
I'm sorry. I'm intentionally stretching it out. How do you feel about shooting films on smartphones, and would you shoot one of your films on a smartphone? This is a good one.
Let me just fix my eyebrows. I'm trying to smooth out
the worried wrinkles. Wrinkles, rather.
Boy, this question always comes up.
It was the perfect question for you. No, but it's the perfect question for you.
My honest answer.
That's what I need. Your honest response.
If it's a film, I would not shoot it on a smartphone. There are scenes that you can shoot with a smartphone. We've done, so there's a short film that we shot some underwater shots with on a smartphone. But, and this is also me talking ignorantly of the versatility of a smartphone in relation to the different attachments that they have now, like the lens attachments that they have. Because for me, for example, and I think we spoke about it earlier, meaning just behind the scenes, we were talking about depth of field. And you can't really get that on a smartphone in the sense that it does have let's say Apple, an iPhone has the portrait mode, and you can get a version of that. But if you look, and it happens on my photos too when I take portrait mode, but it's a forced depth that they do, and sometimes you'll see it on the fringes. I would call it more like
image,
right. In lenses we call it aberrations, but on the fringes you have it's merging it with whether it's the hair or whatever it is. And there's a particular photo that I know I have on my gram, and I see it, and I'm just I hope nobody else sees this. But it was taken in portrait mode, but then it makes it look fake. So there's that, and then that's as a photo, that's as a still. So, as we're talking about, moving images and video, you don't have a lot of options where that is concerned in terms of depth of field. Then there's, the whole issue of dynamic range, and dynamic range is, how much detail is in the highlights and the shadows of the image. So, let's, for example, a blown out sky versus getting the detail of clouds, the white clouds in the sky. Or let's say something in the shadows and it looks black on a phone, whereas on a camera that has high dynamic range on both ends, top and bottom, you can see the details in that. So there's a beauty with that for film when you're too used to doing that in filmmaking, as opposed to not getting that on phone. However, if it's for something like underwater and you don't have all the expensive gear to shoot that underwater, I would say, yeah, by all means.
You guys did that for Tony's
we did do
film.
that for Sink or Swim.
Sink or Swim, yeah.
Right. If I had to do it again, and when I say not that film, but if I had to do another film like that, then I would definitely try and get, an underwater camera, because you do realize the limitations, but it is what you have at that time. If it's for interviews, if it's for documentary type stuff, no, I have no issue with using a phone filming those, because there's a different feel, and you may not need all the capabilities that you need, on a high-end thing. So that's my honest opinion.
And that's fine. We welcome you. We want your honest opinion. So don't shoot one narrative film on your smartphone. Gabby wouldn't. But
if the project, let's say, and this is such a bad example, but I don't say the Blair Witch Project, but if it's a film that has that kind of vibe, then no, definitely, because it's apt for that.
Okay, and you're right. The cell phones that they're using to make videos nowadays, the capacity has grown significantly, and they're building a lot of extensions and lenses.
I'm unaware of.
Yeah, there's a lot going on when it comes to the mobile filmmaking.
100%,
there's a lot going on. But that's her honest response, guys. Love it. Big up yourself. So. Yes, you want to say something.
Check out Selena Gomez's Look at Us Now. That was actually shot, I think, all with iPhones. That wasn't bad.
Check that out. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Have you
it was actually
seen
pretty
it?
good.
Okay, so we're going to watch that. So now we're going into our challenge. Now for the F3 Filmmaker Challenge. Ready, Gabs?
No.
Are you ready to rumble? All right, so this is what you're going to do because you're a DP, right? We have a very plain...
Don't hype it up.
Mega hype it up, because we know you're good. We have a very plain corner of this room, and we have a beautiful muse. I can't call her plain because she's not plain. Not both are not plain. But what I would like you to do is to take that very plain situation and make it cinematic. Do what director photographers do. Shape light. Use light to paint. I love that. Ready?
So if I fail, then what, guys?
No, it's not a pass or fail situation. We're not into that. We're not into that. So you're going to use anything you want to use around this room. You're going to use these lights, and you're going to elevate that corner over there.
It really is dead.
Yes.
I think you chose the absolute
best corner.
It's okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm saying this isn't ideal because right now lots of light is still being let in. So the ideal would be to cut off as much light as possible, back all of this out, all of this. And then for this kind of lighting up here, ideally you'd want something more like a Fresnel light. So it's more controlled.
I don't know what Fresnel means.
So more like a spotlight, but not quite a spotlight. So it's more controlled and circular. But even if it was this, like you can use what we call black wrap. So imagine foil, but not shiny silver, but just like black, but more like a hardcore kind of foil. And you can wrap it around and shape the light that you want. Right. So when we talk about shaping light, it is inferred a lot by how much shadow you have in relation to how much light you have. So like this looks different. It just looks flat when the light is turned here versus when it's off the wall. And like for this, then I would want to cut some of this spill off her face, and you can see where my hand is. So I'd probably like use a flag and cut, this stuff. like this, I would do like a dolly sort of face, but maybe even closer.
Why is it jumping like that?
Because I'm at the focus, yeah. Oh. So even, but there's a beauty as well, for me at least, in even, so there's something, you know, like, you don't have to direct the audience's attention to an image by rocking focus, but you can also misdirect their focus. And when I say that, I mean misdirect their attention. So there's a series that does it a lot called Outsiders, and literally as it's going towards the subject, it goes along, let's say, the line of a gate, but you never pull that subject in focus, because maybe by misdirecting them, you are actually directing them to the right. So sometimes I like to leave things out of focus, or something I've been playing a lot more with lately. But if I were shooting this, there's always a beauty to shooting something. I'm just going to do without focusing so it doesn't jump. But a beauty to shooting something in the foreground, dirtying, what we call dirtying the image. The first shot I would have gone with, I would have passed along the window pane and just had her like reading in the background without us being outside. And if I were shooting it for day, then I would probably switch that out, or not switch it out. I would take out the lamp and maybe use one of the plants in the background and then pull this off the background a little bit more. And then the framing would probably be more angular, so then I would move the chair a little bit. So that's actually the still. So there's foreground, there's midground, there's background. So this would probably be more background. And yeah, should have the light coming from outside, keen from outside. And I would flag like all of this off. So like you see the shadow on her face now with my hand. And then it would either be, I would edge brim her head or brim the fan, one of them. Always trying to put something in the foreground. And the other thing is based on the lens that you have. If you go closer with the lens, so if you have a longer lens, the image, the field of view is compressed, and I'll just do that with my hand shortly. Which simply means that the field of view, which is like this, on a wider angle lens, is more compressed when it's longer. But then what ends up happening is that it separates the background more. So if you want the scene to look more crowded than it actually is, the ideal thing, and you don't have a lot of extras, and you're in a relatively big space, use a longer lens. It compresses everything and everybody, and then it makes the distance. You get a lot more depth of field between the two. So it definitely feels a lot more compressed as an image. But like I said, with the phone, you don't have the option. I would actually prefer to shoot this more portrait, just so you get the feel of what a film camera would look like. So this is more going to be a still.
Gabby,
yes.
It's always such an awesome experience to watch you work.
Thank you.
Like,
I don't know what that feels like though, but yes. Okay.
To watch yourself work, you should make us video you and then you watch back the video. But the level of attention to detail, the level of care, and just how much you know what you're doing. Like,
I'm glad you think so.
I feel like you know what you're doing. I feel like you know what you're doing. And you definitely elevated that con. I love that we got all of 2 looks, guys. we're wrapping this up, Gabby, we're coming to the end of the act.
It's been a good time.
It's been a good time. It's been a very educational time. And like I was telling you, like your teacher kicked in right there. And it's okay. It's fine. Don't bemoan it.
That side of it, not bad. But yes, the marking side.
The instructional side of it really did come out in that experience of watching you and you sharing with us why you make certain choices. So that was remarkable. So Gabby, I know you are your biggest critic.
Yes.
You're a biggest critic. But what does success for you look like? What will you need to have accomplished or done for you to say Gabby is a successful filmmaker?
Well, my dream has always been to be a director of narrative feature-length films. That has always been it from day one. The overarching thing for me is if I can tell the story that I want to tell that has a great impact on somebody else or people, then I am successful or I will be successful. If I were to add the feature-length part of it, it would be to tell a story, a feature-length story on screen. So not just written, because I've written screenplays for feature-length films, but it is to realize that and to have that story affect people in the way that I hope it would and will.
Okay. And I believe that's going to happen in short order.
I believe so.
And please remember to call me.
I will.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Give me some work. No jokes.
No,
though.
put it out there. Put it out there.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah, no, not a problem at all.
So that's good. That's excellent, actually. Give me one word of advice that you would give to, say, an up-and-coming filmmaker.
Well, not one word, but it would be ambitious. Never take no for an answer once it's in good stead. There's always a door that will open, which leads to being determined and just never stop. Because a lot of times people give up, and they give up when, yes, they've probably tried a lot, or right before there's that door that's about to open for them, and you just never know. I mean, I'm a strong believer in God. I have a strong faith. I don't necessarily practice it as much as I should all the time, but it's been big for me in the sense that, you know, every time I feel like I'm about to give up on something, something says no, because you really, and it's just that reminder of, you know, there's so many things happening behind the scenes that you're unaware of. And it's that same thing, you know, we spoke about earlier about doing the work, putting in the work. And as you see it, as you look at it, right, what's in front of you, it may seem as if nothing is happening, but you have no idea what's happening behind you, around you, that you are unaware of. You know, who is speaking about your work, what doors are being opened for you, which may take months, a couple years, you never know. And, you know, when I started out, I was in a lull for about 2 years. But it's also what you do in that time. So in that time, I was trying to better myself. You hear this a lot, you know, don't compare yourself to others. It is natural to compare yourself to others. But the main thing is if and when that happens, think about where you were before, where you are now. There are things that, and you know this as well, there are things you were praying for in the past and you're actually right there in that moment. So live and celebrate that moment. But then don't give up on what that dream is that you have, that you're working towards, because you just never know what's happening. And everything is a step towards it, a step towards it. And when you accomplish that goal, then you're going to have another goal. So, you know, yeah, don't give up. Be ambitious. Don't be apologetic about being ambitious and be very determined.
I don't think I need to say anything else. That was very encouraging. For me, it was encouraging. So I can imagine that it will be encouraging for some of those who are watching. Thank you so, so much. So Gabby, tell them, because me know how to reach you. Tell them how they can follow your work, what is next for you, what to look out with your name branded on it next, how to reach you if they want to give you some work, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
You can follow me on IG on Instagram at Gabrielle_Blackwood, and you can go to my website, which is GabrielleBlackwood.com. And then what to look forward to. There are a couple projects that I'm either in pre-production or post-production for. One is Norman, which is a feature-length documentary which we shot in 2021. We've been deep in post-production on that, and we're wrapping up right now because we just did the musical composition. So
Ooh, nice.
I'm looking forward to that one. And there's also a docu-series which I have been shooting about the bobsled team, so stay tuned for that. And then there are a couple feature-length films that I'm in pre-production for, not just Kendall, but some others as well. Two of which, yes, that I've written, another one which I didn't, but which hopefully will be made between this year and next year, or I would say by next year, we will see.
Wow.
We will see.
Wow, things are going for you. Yep, enough pot there fire.
Yeah,
I love
but
it.
all of this is to say, it's been a journey, and so we do need, investors, not just for myself, but we need investors for the film industry to make the films that we want to make. All the films that we've been writing for years now. I mean, sorry, this is on another tangent, but the Film Fund has finally opened
yes, we actually had that conversation earlier.
But people are, who have bottled up all of their stories over the past however many years, 20 odd years, 10 years, 15 years, 5 years, are coming for it all in one go. So, we do need people outside of just the government to invest in film and in filmmaking, because filmmaking is such, you see it in the States, you see it in Europe, you see it in Asia, you see it in Korea, like that Korean wave. That's something I've been studying, just, how they do things. And it's, yes, the support of their government, but it's also the confidence of the people in the work. And we have projects sitting. We have stories that have been written. Now we need to make them. So we need people to invest and have confidence in that. And I am happy where we're at now in the industry. As we spoke before, and I was saying, how I started out. Now we have the old merging with the new. And, a lot of the stalwarts before me have been very encouraging in terms of just seeing the industry grow. And having that support has been immeasurable. And so if there's anything that I can do as a filmmaker, or people in my generation can do for the other generation, I want film to be, and it has now become, a viable profession for somebody who's coming out of high school. I don't want people to be like, when they tell their parents, oh, I want to do filmmaking, they're going to be like, what is that? You can't do that in Jamaica. No, I think we need to, and we are doing it, and it will take time, but we need to continue to build the industry so that we can get to that stage where it is an area that we can build revenue, it can help grow the economy, but more importantly, our stories can be told, and not just to local people, but locally, globally, they can appreciate what we have to offer.
And with that, Gabby, thank you so much for being
for
on the
having me.
show. I always do that. Like,
You weren't joking about that part.
I feel like in another life I did sing, I swear. But thank you, I sincerely appreciate that. Or rather, sincerely appreciate your being here. And that is a wrap on this episode of F3, Filmmaker Feature Fridays, where we celebrate our Jamaican, Caribbean, diaspora filmmakers who are making waves across the industry, whether it's here at home or abroad. These filmmakers who are putting our stories at the forefront of their work. Filmmakers like today's guest, Gabrielle Blackwood, a remarkable writer, director, and cinematographer. Do look out for her, follow her on social. She has some projects coming up, and those promise to be amazing. And to you guys, thank you so much for joining us, and see you on the next episode. Bye. Love you. Big up yourself, Gabby.
Thank you.